From the wonderful world of Disney, 3 Without Fear.
Mexico announces the departure of flight number 201 from Los Angeles to La Paz, Baja California. Now loading at gate number 23.
Me. Plenty of time, Dave. Plenty of time.
I do wish George could be at the airport to meet you. Don't worry, Mom. I'll just hop up this plane, get on the small one, and in less than an hour, I'll be at the ranch.
Oh, I still wonder why they had to build that way off in the mountains like that.
Well, that's the whole point. It's remote. Like Walden Pond.
His name was Dave Rodgers. He was 13 years old. And he was heading for a 2-week vacation at his uncle's ranch in the remote wilderness of Baja California in Mexico. His folks had been getting him ready for the trip for most of the summer, and now his father was going over all the final details for what must have been the 15th time.
Now remember to check the airline counter when you land and be sure to confirm reservations for your return flight, which remember now, is the day before school.
How could I forget?
We're going to miss you. Take care of yourself. We love you.
Tight lines, Dave. Hey, I almost forgot. This might come in handy.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
Take care, Dave. Bye-bye.
Have fun.
I still wish his first trip could have been to Mother's place.
He'll do all right. He's waited a long time for this. And Dave can take care of himself.
Like a lot of boys, Dave had never done too well in geography. But now he was curious about this mysterious 1,000-mile peninsula he was about to visit. Since its discovery by Cortez, over 4 centuries of attempts at colonization and settlement have been defeated by its jagged mountains and burning deserts. Even today, Baja California remains virtually unpopulated for most of its length. After a 2-hour flight, the jetliner landed Dave at La Paz, the only major city in the southern part of the peninsula. Here he met Juan Ramos and transferred to a small bush plane for a short flight north to his uncle's ranch, a matter of about 60 miles. From this low altitude, Dave was even more impressed by the mile after mile of stark desolation below. They had flown about half an hour without seeing the slightest sign of civilization, when Juan pointed out a high ridge ahead. Just beyond was his uncle's ranch.
What is it?
I don't know. Plenty of fuel. Maybe a clock gas line. We'll be all right.
Is the beach big enough?
Uh-huh. Just hope the sand is hard enough.
Do you think you can fix the motor?
I'll try.
Juan? Juan? Are you okay?
There was no telling how badly Juan was hurt. It might be hours before he came to, if he came to at all. Dave was badly frightened, and in his fright, he made a poor decision. His father had always told him, if you get lost or in trouble, stay put, and let help come to you. But Juan could die before help got here, and he had said that the ranch was just over that ridge. It couldn't be too far. Surely he could get there by sundown and bring help.
Juan! Juan!
On a beach several miles to the south, Pedro, his sister Maria, and their dog Chico were making their way northward. They were following the coast because the traveling was easier and because they wanted to avoid civilization. And they were hurrying because they knew that somewhere, not too far behind, following relentlessly, was Manuel. By now, Dave had covered several miles up the steep and hostile canyon. The sun was nearly on the horizon. There was no use turning back. It would be dark before he could get even partway down.
Dave. Dave!
Obviously, the boy had gone to look for help. But which way? He could have gone either way along the beach.
Dave!
Or worst of all, into the hills. The nearest settlement was a 3-day hike across a jagged mountain range. Without food or water, Dave could never make it. Juan could only hope he'd give up and get back to the plain before dark.
XA302. XA302. Carlos, contéstame. La Paz. La Paz.
With every ridge David crested for the last hour, he'd expected to be at the top of the hill. Now, in the last rays of the setting sun, he realized instead he was in a box canyon. Even if he'd had the strength, he could go no further. In the fading light to the south, Pedro and Maria, too, had found a place to sleep just above the high tide line. Now, for a little while, there was time to rest and dream of the happier life they hoped was ahead, and to forget about Manuel. With the coming of dawn, Dave was just beginning to wake up from a long night's sleep of exhaustion. But many of the creatures of the night were looking for shady spots where they could spend the heat of the day. Juan's head was still hurting as badly as it had the night before. And he was just about convinced now that Dave was really lost.
Dave!
The trouble with the plane had been as simple as he'd thought, a clogged gas line which he'd fixed easily. But now he was faced with another dilemma.
Dave!
Should he wait here for Dave or go to La Paz for help? It was the dizzying throb in Juan's head that made the decision for him. That and the early hour. There would be plenty of time for an all-day search if he went straight to La Paz.
Yes, Mr. Rodgers. Well, I stay overnight on the beach, then I thought it would be better to come and get some help. Yes, we have some plans up now.
Es chubasco. Es imposible buscarlos hasta que pase el chubasco. Dile que lo sintemos mucho, pero que no se puede.
I'm sorry, Mr. Rodgers, but due to an approaching storm, we cannot look for Dave after today. I'm sorry, sir.
The scorpion's venom alone would have been enough to weaken Dave badly, but the long run had served to pump it through his body and increase its poisonous effects many-fold. Now, with the last of his waning strength, he managed to scratch a hopeful signal in the sand. Pedro and Maria had lived in this country all their lives, and they were quick to recognize the mark of the scorpion sting. The only treatment Pedro knew was a mud pack to ease the pain and draw the poison. But it would be many hours before the boy came to. Once again, the sound of the airplane. They knew they must not be seen in case it was Manuel. That meant hiding themselves and the stranger too. They hid from the search planes all that afternoon, not daring to move. By evening, though, the planes had stopped coming. There were roast clams. Dave had recovered consciousness, and his appetite was back with a vengeance.
These are delicious.
Now they had to get acquainted and find a way around the language barrier.
I'm Dave. Dave.
Dave?
Ah, Dave. Yo soy Pedro. Pedro. Ella es María. Este es Chico. You're Pedro. Maria. It's Chico. Very good. Muy bueno. María es mi hermana. Hermana. What? Hermana. Hermana. Ah, she's your sister, Hermana. Sí. I'm from Los Angeles. Los Angeles. Los Ángeles, sí. Nosotros venimos de Todos Santos. Todos Santos. Todos Santos. You come from Todos Santos. I see. Good. Where are you going? Where are you going? ¿Qué? ¿Dónde? Ah, a San Quintín, a la casa de mi abuela. San Quintín, abuela. Grandmother. So you come from Todos Santos, and you're going to visit your grandmother in San Quintín. And my uncle's expecting me. I have to find help. Help! Ayuda. Ah, mi abuela ayuda, pero ahorita dormir. Slip. Oh, sleep. Okay.
And so, as simply as that, the great adventure began. Of course, it wouldn't have begun at all for Dave, except that next morning the edge of the storm had hit. The Chubasco, the hurricane of Mexico's Pacific shore.
Dave, levántate. What's the matter? Chubasco, vámonos, viene Chubasco. What? Chubasco. What's a Chubasco? Chubasco. Snowstorm, shower, hurricane in Mexico. A storm's coming? Sí, vente. But I can't. I gotta wait for help. Ayuda. The aeroplano. No aeroplano. It's Chubasco. But I gotta stay here. They'll be looking for me. I got to stay here.
Manuel!
Hey, where you going?
Adios!
Hey, wait! Wait, I'll go with you.
Dave didn't know why he ran, but anyone that scared Pedro and Maria that badly had to be someone to stay away from. They could run forever on the beach and still not lose Manuel. Their best chance of escape was to climb the cliffs onto the desert and try to lose him in the brush and foliage. Chico had given them the extra few minutes they needed. Now they were out of Manuel's sight and able to double back to the beach and get away while he went after them inland. It was then they found what they'd been needing most of all. Not only a shelter from the storm, but a perfect place to hide from Manuel. Now there was time for Dave to try to learn a little more about who it was they'd been running away from, and why.
Who was that? Who was that? Tinne es, es Manuel. Es muy malo. Manuel. Manuel, father and padre es nuestro patrón. Dos.
Oh, Juan!
Sí, muy malo.
Sí, y nos pega mucho. Pega, pega.
He beat you? Manuel, pega? ¿Dónde? ¿Dónde padre? Where's your father? Mi papá murió pescando. ¿Murió? He died. He died? I'm sorry. And your mom? Your mother? Mother. También murió. She's dead too. And you're orphans. ¿Qué? ¿Por qué Manuel.
Ah.
Pearls. That's why Manuel's after you.
Sí, Manuel quiere las perlas.
No las dio papá. No las dio papá.
Your father gave them to you? That's why you're going to your grandmother's house. Hope it isn't much farther.
This cave Pedro had found seemed almost tailor-made. There was firewood and clams to be dug outside. And as long as it rained, the leak in the roof meant there'd be plenty of water. For 3 weary children, alone on one of the most desolate peninsulas in the world, there could certainly have been no better place to weather the Chubasco. Yet they never stopped to question their luck. They were here, and they were safe, and for the time being, that was all that mattered. Now, at last, it was time to rest. And as Dave fell asleep, his last thoughts were of his parents. He wished he could tell them he was safe, and that he was with Pedro and Maria, and that even though he was scared to death, somehow he knew everything was going to come out fine. Every hour, the storm's intensity increased. Many animals were in need of shelter, too, and it was only natural that some came to the cave. They found it already occupied. But in this time of common need, there was an unspoken truce among all creatures which would last until the storm was over. For 2 more days and nights, the Chubasco howled its way across the coast. While in their warm, dry cave, the American boy, the 2 Mexican children, their dog, and an assortment of animal refugees passed the time in comfort and safety. Of course, there was the constant worry that Manuel might suddenly appear. But it gradually became apparent that he wouldn't, and so they waited and thought their own thoughts. By now, Dave was resigned to the fact that no help could come until the storm had ended, and as good a way to pass the time as any was with English lessons.
Stick. Right, stick. Grip. This is stick. Dick. Okay, this is fish. 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 Right, fish. Rip. Fish. Right.
Then one morning, the animals had gone, and they were awakened by a strange silence. The Chubasco was over. It was possible to travel again. Dave had no idea if search planes would be back looking for him, or if there were, whether they'd look this far north. Not that it mattered, because surely it couldn't be much farther to San Quintin and help. There didn't seem to be much need to hurry, and it felt so good to be out in the air again and get some exercise that they did more playing than walking. By afternoon, they'd only covered a couple of miles.
Chico, tráelo. Chico. Chico. Chico, tráelo. Tráelo. Let it go, Chico. Bring it back. Tráelo, Chico. Muy bien, Chico. Muy bien. Good boy, Chico. Ahí va, Chico. Ahí va. Manuel!
Dave could see it starting all over again, the running and the hiding and the fear. There must be a way to put Manuel off their trail once and for all. That was when he noticed the riptide just up the beach.
Wait, I just got an idea. And I think it'll work.
Dave's idea was a simple one. If Manuel thought they were dead, he'd go home, and they'd be rid of him forever. All they had to do was leave their clothes by the riptide, make footprints into the sea, and then hide out. It was Pedro who thought of the extra touch of realism they needed. Chico.
Quédate, Chico. Quédate. Quédate, Chico. Quédate. Quédate.
course, wasn't so much interested in the children as in the pearls they were carrying. Well, the children and the pearls had disappeared, apparently to a watery grave. Manuel would have to settle for the money in Dave's wallet, which, after all, was better than nothing. That evening, Pedro went fishing, and he seemed to catch another big one every time he cast his line. All in all, things couldn't have been better. There was more than enough to eat, the warmth of their cooking fire, and a bond of companionship that was growing deeper with every day that passed. But the true test of friendship comes with adversity. And the next morning brought a change in the weather and a change in their luck. It had turned cold, the piercing cold of a strong sea wind. And while leaving their clothes behind had helped them lose Manuel, now they would have given anything to have them back. To make things worse, the fishing had gone sour. After half a day without a trace of a nibble, they had to move on, and their empty stomachs only made the cold seem twice as biting. That night, there wasn't much firewood to be found, and they huddled together out of the wind, sharing their most precious possession, the blanket. They were shivering so much they hardly slept. For the first time, all three began to worry about something they hadn't even thought about before, just staying alive. For another day and a half, hunger and cold were their constant companions. And then, late one afternoon, they crested a ridge and found the beached boat.
Hey, it's okay, come on.
Cuidado, cuidado. Sí, yo sé. Mira, latas de comida.
¿Dónde?
Ver.
Many miles to the south, the search for Dave had finally begun again. And Juan Ramos was flying Mr. Rodgers along the beach where he had made the forced landing nearly a week before.
que se ahogaron. Porque ahí menos estaba el perro.
¿Estás seguro?
Sí. Lo busqué bastante.
Gracias. He found the clothes on the beach north of here. 2 of the children were his charges. They must have gone in swimming, all 3 of them. And then they were caught on a rip tide. Their dog was left stained by the clothes.
Gracias. Gracias.
The boat had turned out to be full of treasures of every kind. First and most important, there were clothes. They weren't exactly a perfect fit. In fact, Maria's new dress was an old Navy shirt. But right at the moment, that didn't matter a bit.
Pedro!
There were other finds, too, a cooking pot, and even better, a store of canned food.
Mira, el jote.
Under the floorboards in the cockpit, Pedro uncovered a box of fishing tackle. And in the cabin, Dave came across some rolled-up charts. Now, at last, they'd be able to figure out where they were and where they were going. And so that evening, there was a feast for all, even Chico. There was time to study the map and to ask an all-important question.
Pedro! ¿Dónde San Quintín? Aquí? Is it here?
No, San Quintín está aquí.
That far?
According to the map, it was well over 300 miles to San Quintín. Dave's hope of immediate rescue evaporated. And that night, he dreamed of walking forever along an empty beach, knowing he would never reach the end.
What's going on? Pedro, Maria, come on, vámonos! Hurry up! Jump, come on! Maria, jump! Jump! Chico, vente, vente!
There hadn't been time to save a thing, except for Pedro's little bag of necessities, and of course their clothes. At least they'd be a little more comfortable from this point on. But to the north, the lonely miles to San Quintin stretched almost endlessly, and there was no telling what adventures lay in wait for them ahead.
Danny proved the innocence of a new boy at school next in the Edison Twins. Get with the program, dudes. It's Full Metal Duck this afternoon at 5 o'clock. Don't miss DuckTales.